Welcome to Photoactive, a podcast about photography and technology. I'm Kirk McElhearn.
And I'm Jeff Carlson.
You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. The first thing I would like to say is that I was wrong.
Oh. About what?
I said last week that Apple would say that this was the fastest iPhone ever and the best iPhone camera ever, and they did not say either of those things.
Did they? Huh.
Yep.
I mean, I think it was probably implied, but I don't remember exactly if they said those words.
They always say it. They did say magical several times when talking about the AirPods in the very beginning.
Right.
But they didn't have the same sort of, overblown adjectives when talking about the iPhone, which was unusual for Apple.
Clearly, they've been listening to our podcast, and they were like, "Wow, we can't say that again because Kirk and Jeff have called us out on it."
In case you've noticed, both of us have colds. Jeff's voice seems more affected than mine, so if you can turn the bass down on your whatever party speaker you're listening to this on. I said to Jeff just before we started recording, I've got thoughts about a lot of things here that are maybe not the kind of thoughts that one usually has, if that makes sense.
I am enormously intrigued to find out what that like let's unpack that.
Well, I've been thinking of some elements about this that are meta elements, right? Not just, okay, this is what's in the new phone and the three models and the two sizes and all that. I've been thinking a little bit beyond that about what this indicates about the future.
Oh.
And I guess the elephant in the room is the iPhone Air. iPhone Air. I was going to say iPad Air, and I was going to say iPod Air. And It's like, okay, they reuse these things, and it's an Apple term, and it's really good. I had the very first MacBook Air when it came out in 2008, and that was revolutionary at the time. And you look at how it progressed and how you've got the MacBook Pro and all the rest of them are MacBook Airs. And so the thinness of the Air became normal. And I was thinking about this phone. Now, I have to say, I'm not buying a new phone. I bought my 16 Pro Max. I have no need for a new phone this year. I don't know about you. Maybe you'll get a loaner to review or something. But the iPhone Air struck me as very interesting. First of all, it's kind of thin compared to today's phones. But if I look at some of the numbers, the iPhone Air is 5.64 millimeters of depth. So they count length, height, and depth. So the thickness is 5.64 millimeters. Does that remind you of anything, of any previous iPhone?
No.
The iPhone 6 was only 6.9 millimeters.
Really?
We forget how thin that was. You don't remember Bendgate? That it was so thin that it was bending in people's pockets?
Yeah.
And you want to see something even thinner, look at this. Now, obviously, the listeners can't hear this, but I'm holding up an iPod Touch, which is 6.1 millimeters. And that gives me an interesting perspective on exactly how thin this device is. The iPod Touch is actually quite heavy for its size, and that probably is similar weight per size to the new iPhone Air.
Huh.
And it makes me wonder, is this the direction of phones? Because just to go over a couple of elements about it, I mean, we'll talk about the camera plateau later, which is an interesting concept.
Yes.
But they gave battery stats for the iPhone Air saying that you can watch all 4 seasons of For All Mankind, so 40 hours of video. But to do that, you have to snap on the MagSafe battery pack. Mm-hmm. You get 27 hours of video playback without it. And so they're selling a device that is underpowered, that has a simple camera. And it made me think of something really interesting. A lot of people don't care about the cameras. I mean, we're a photography podcast, so we're going to talk about them. But a lot of people don't buy the iPhone for the better camera. They buy it because it's an iPhone, because it's got a camera that's good enough. And one of the Apple people said something to the effect of, we've kept all of the most popular features of our iPhone camera in this. And I found that really interesting. They know, believe me, they know how many photos you take, in which mode. They collect data on that. It's anonymous, but they know how many zooms you do, how many macros and everything. So they know what people are using.
Yeah.
And they've decided to strip down a phone. It's not the cheapest model because it's the chic model this year. But not everyone needs the battery life of the biggest phone. Not everyone needs the fanciest camera.
That was a lot. And I think you're right. Okay. So part of my pause here is that I'm actually a little bit stunned that the old phones were as thin. Now, a huge part of this is battery and power. One of the neat things about the way they've designed this with that plateau is that everything is in the plateau. Like basically the whole phone. That's
really interesting. The whole phone is in the plateau and the rest of it is the display and the battery.
If you remember when the very first MacBook came out, so not the MacBook Air, but just
the single port MacBook.
The single port MacBook. One of the fascinating things about that was if you opened it up, everything was basically just in a tight little like rectangle at the top, and most of it was all battery. So they're taking that same idea. In terms of cameras, I think people do buy it for the camera, but the people who are buying the Air specifically are going to be buying it because it is light, because it is thin, because it is cool. It's going to be the phone that they want people to notice. And I think partially, for people who use a phone a lot, they don't want something that's going to be as heavy. Like those are all
but if
valid.
they use it a lot, the battery life's not going to be sufficient, and they're going to be unhappy that they've got to snap on that battery pack.
Yeah, but how many people already have some sort of a battery pack or external charger or something that they use anyway? Like I would suspect that there's a lot of people, or you go into it knowing that this is the trade-off.
But, right. That's what you need to know, and Apple didn't make that clear. You have to look into the details or listen to the Photoactive podcast to find out things like this.
Yeah.
But I don't think most people buy the new iPhone for the camera. Apple thinks they do because it's the only thing that they can sell. It's the only thing that changes from model to model anymore. Everything else is small tweaks. I mean, okay, they added ProMotion to all of the iPhone models. Mm-hmm. But other than that, there's not much going on. There's always a new chip. There's always, this is a little bit better. Bluetooth 6 and Thread and tiny little things.
Yeah.
But the camera is the one thing. It's not just, it's a visual feature. They can show photos taken with the camera, even if every year the photos look just as good regardless of which camera it is. But they can show photos taken with the camera other than showing, I don't know, pictures of the chip or graphs of of how fast it is.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's valid. I think maybe we're being too picky here. I think that people are not going to buy a brand new phone just for the camera, but I think it's a heavier consideration than what you seem to be saying. I think that they come to the point where they realize, okay, I need a new phone because mine is either old, slow, cracked, it's run out of space, whatever. And so when they then go to look for a new phone, that's when they're going to look and say, oh, well, this Air looks really nice, but it only has one camera. And so maybe I need the regular iPhone 17, which has two cameras. And then you
which is $200 cheaper.
Which is $200 cheaper. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting.
That's the interesting thing, that the Air is in between in price. I was chatting with a friend during the presentation. I said, I think this is going to be about $11.99, and he said $13.99, and we're both surprised that it's only $9.99, $1,000.
Yeah.
So the base 17 is $800, the Air is $1,000, and the base Pro is $1,100.
Yes. Yeah. And the base Pro went up in cost. Last year it was $999, but it was 128 gigs of storage instead of 256.
Right.
So
right, they're all 256 now.
Yeah.
So that means that if you do need more storage, you're saving money, or you're not paying extra, or it's rolled into the price, or whatever.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that there are a lot of people who, once they realize that they need to make a new phone purchase, then like the camera consideration does come in, but not nearly in the way that we look at it.
How many people do you think are going to buy an iPhone Pro because of that thing that they showed at the end with 150 iPhones doing bullet time shots to film a motion picture? That's just showing off. No one buys an iPhone for that. Or a director does and buys 100 iPhones because he knows what it can do.
Yeah.
But that's That's not for normies.
No. But it's a very good example of like what it can do. And I think that like there is some cachet from having like being able to say that this is a pro level phone and then show a very professional thing that you can do with it. I think that's
Well, you can do it with 100 of them. You can't do it with
you
just
can do it with
one.
100. Yeah, exactly. Like that specific feature was I can't. It's called Genlock, I think, which is a way of synchronizing video footage. I'm not as familiar with it, but if that's the thing that you're doing, it's super cool. And I'm sure we've said this before. We're looking at that. Let's see. The Pro Max comes in at like what $1,200 for the base. And you can also kick that up to 2 terabytes of storage. And I haven't priced that out.
For another 800.
Okay, another 8. Okay, yeah. So $2,000
So you can go for $2,000
for this. In the world of commercial filmmaking, that is probably
That's
a
nothing.
drop in the bucket. So yeah, of course I'm going to order 5 of these, you know.
But that's not who this is targeted at. This is the iPhones in the Apple Store are targeted at normies.
Yeah.
And for the past few years, Apple has had a drop-down menu on the iPhone website pages to compare the new iPhone with previous models and speed or graphics or whatever, right?
Specs.
And you can choose for the current ones, you can compare it to anything from the iPhone 12 to the iPhone 16. So you can't compare it to last year's model because there's not enough difference. But they know that there are people with 2, 3, and 4-year-old phones who are upgrading now and want to see the comparison to their phone. And I think too many people forget, too many tech journalists write comparing this year's phone to last year's phone, and that's not how most phones are sold. Most phones are sold when they're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years old, and that's where to compare them. Which means that even if we're saying that there are tiny upgrades this year, if you accumulate all the tiny upgrades, say, since the iPhone 13, someone upgrading from the 13 to the 17 has a huge upgrade.
Oh, that would be a beautiful upgrade. Yeah, definitely. And I think, going back to the cameras, my wife has an iPhone 13 Pro. And she's been perfectly happy with that. Every once in a while, if we're out and we want to take a picture of something, or like we're having dinner, we want to take a picture with friends or something, then I will use my phone, the 16 Pro, because it's better in low light and all that. But for
the husband has the better phone than the wife.
Of course, yeah, I know. It's so typical.
It's your job. I know.
It's totally my job. But for her, like she has rarely, if ever, expressed that thought of, oh, geez, my camera's not as good. And that's even taking into account.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
She went to Europe this year, and like that was her camera. And I think, like she probably had some frustrating times when she didn't have as much zoom as she would like, but like it works out for her perfectly well. So at some point, I don't think she's going to upgrade to the 17s, but at some point she'll get another one and it'll be amazing. So yeah.
And she has a 13, which is a 12 megapixel camera.
Yeah.
It only went to 48 megapixels with the 14.
Yeah.
Okay, something else I want to discuss, and this is a long-term thing that really struck me. On both the iPhone Air and the iPhone Pro, I don't think the normal iPhone is like this. You have the plateau with the phone, and on the iPhone Pro, you have a piece of glass in the back, which is to dissipate heat. In the iPhone Air, you have what's it called, a vapor chamber, which is basically it's a drop of ionized water that can move around in this chamber to circulate heat away from the top, the plateau where the heat is, down to other parts, so the phone doesn't overheat.
Yeah, but that's only in the Pro.
I'm thinking,
not the Air.
No, that's in the Air.
No, I'm pretty sure it's just in the Pro.
It's in the Pro.
It's in the Pro, yeah.
Okay, so I'm thinking that going forward, we're going to reach a singularity where the chips in phones are too hot and they have to find a new solution to cool them off.
Yeah.
And if Apple's already doing this today, we're not far off from that, which is going to be it's going to slow things down. We've talked a little bit about AI and how it can be done on device, and AI on device is very demanding of the CPU and the GPU as well. If this stuff keeps advancing and the chips keep getting faster, we're going to hit a wall, I think, at some point.
Yeah, possibly. And also, I mean, you can't discount the fact that Apple is doing this because, I mean, so far, Apple's chips have been the most energy efficient and power efficient designs. So it's not like they're doing this for the first time. So if Apple is acknowledging that they need to do better heat dissipation on their own efficient chips, then that means there's a lot of power going on. I mean, I'm sure that other chip manufacturers can probably boast, well, we've got more raw power, but burns through battery quicker. It makes the device hotter. They did mention on-device AI processing, like just really briefly as a list of like why we need this vapor chamber cooling. By the way, vapor chamber. What a cool name. I just have to say.
It is. It's much better than liquid glass.
When Jaws, the presenter Jaws, I'd have to go back and look at it, but I remember watching it and he was talking about vapor chamber and they showed the animation. And then he said like 10 different designy, engineering, manufacturing words. And I was just like, oh, that was just kind of beautiful. Like you had me at vapor chamber, right? It's super interesting, but one of the things that I thought of regarding this is Apple does a great job of expressing things like this. Like it has so much power and we've had to develop this cooling system and just the raw power. Oh, one of the things that they mentioned was that the new processors, the A19 processors, are MacBook level amounts of processing.
That's right.
And like that is impressive. But I always come back to the fact that, okay, here I have my phone, my old janky iPhone 16 Pro that is now almost a year old, that is super slow in comparison, I'm sure. No, but I know that this is powerful, but I don't feel like I'm using all that power. And
you don't need to use it. You don't do anything on an iPhone other than processing photos where you don't realize it because it's those trillions of operations per second in the background. You don't do anything. You're not doing complicated spreadsheets on your iPhone. Mm-mm. You're not, I don't know, rendering 3D videos or things like that. The demanding things that you do are transparent.
Yeah.
You shoot a video in 4K, 60 frames per second. It's just you're shooting a video. You don't see any difference between that and any other video.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and to their credit, like that's a success because shooting 4K 60, if you don't have something that's demanding, you either can't do it or you drop frames or so. Like you get that experience that is not as good. And so here the experience is just fine. I would also say like I don't play any real demanding video games. There are some things out there. Yeah. I mean, it has like hardware-based ray tracing, like all that's super, super impressive. But I guess the point that I'm really taking a long time to get to is so many people are going to have this amazing processing technology and they're not going to use it. But it makes sense.
They're going to use 5% of its capabilities.
Yeah, but it totally makes sense for Apple. I mean, they're not going to do like, this is the dumb slow one. They can't do that, right? So it just amazes me how much goes into these things, how much technology and how much processing power and how much potential. And most people, they're going to read their social media. They're going to play, just sort of like everyday kind of games, crosswords and what have
Wordle.
You. And they're going to take pictures.
Yeah. And shoot videos.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get into the specificities of the camera, which is your bailiwick, I just want to say one thing. That orange color is so cool. If I was buying a phone today, I would buy the orange. I'm a real fan of orange. That's the color I would want. That's like the international. What did they call it when they released the Apple Watch Ultra with the little button? There was a word for that. The international something orange color.
That color has like a specific name. It's like international emergency orange or something like that. Like
something like that.
This isn't quite that, but it is. It feels like that.
It's close.
Yeah,
it's close. But that is a badass color.
It is, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes. My colleague Macy Meyer wrote kind of a contradictory take because she doesn't like the orange, and apparently people are like up in arms. Well, not up in arms, but it's the internet. People are arguing about whether the orange is cool or not. And I'm like you. I'm like, well, it's orange, so that just settles it. Like, it's very cool. But I will put a link to it, not just because like she makes some good points, even though she's completely wrong, but it is really well written. So I'll just link to that.
The thing is, if you don't like it, there are 2 other colors.
There are.
There's
amazing.
No point in saying that it's a terrible color because you have 2 other options. Which there's only 3 color options for the Pro model this year.
Yeah.
There's no black. I don't know what they're calling. I'm not on the page where you buy it and you choose the colors, but I'm looking. There's a silver, orange, and a navy
it's like
blue.
Deep navy blue.
Something that they've come up with that's like
which honestly looks really good
silver, cosmic orange, and deep blue.
Deep blue, yeah.
I think cosmic orange. I think the word cosmic is not good for the orange, but okay. But deep blue, it definitely looks like a deep blue. Silver,
silver is for the people who just don't want to make a big color choice, and that's okay. But yeah. I mean, honestly, the deep blue looks really good, and there's part of me that would say, well, maybe I should do the deep blue because everybody's going to get orange. But then I wouldn't have orange. So
fair point.
Yeah.
Then you wouldn't have orange.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the cameras. This is more your field.
Okay.
For me, the most impressive is the new selfie camera.
You know what? I was wondering how you're gonna approach that because you've still never taken a selfie.
I don't take selfies.
I know.
But I realized the usefulness of a camera like that. And I think at some point we had a guest who talked about why don't cameras have square sensors?
Oh, yeah.
They have a 24 by 36 3:2 ratio sensor or a 4:3 ratio sensor. But why not square so you can turn it in any direction and you take advantage of the whole sensor in either way?
Yeah. So this is an interesting thing, partially because, to be honest, I am interested in this feature just because it is different. Like, I don't know if there are any other phone makers doing this. So basically, the selfie camera on all 3 of the new phones is a square sensor.
And it's interesting that they put the camera on all 3 of them.
So it's a square sensor, and part of the appeal of this is what Apple calls center stage, which is something that we've seen on like the cameras on a MacBook Pro. What it does is it will give you enough field of view, I guess, so that it can focus in on you. Let's say if it's just you, you'll get like a portrait crop selfie, right? But then if someone were to come up next to me or 2 people were to come up next to me, it would see that there are 3 people in the frame and then switch the aspect ratio to a landscape. And so you're not having to do that. It's making that decision to make sure that everybody is properly framed. Now, I'm super interested to see how this works and if you can override it and if you could say, I want a picture of Kirk and I standing together, but we're at a pub and there are 2 other people behind us looking vaguely at the camera. Like, is it going to select them too, right? And so I'm really curious to see if there are any manual controls over this, but I guess my biggest concern.
Well, there is a manual zoom control because for each aspect ratio, so vertical or horizontal, you can zoom in or zoom out, and there are controls on the interface that let you do that.
Okay, I didn't see those when I was watching the.
It's not all automatic. Now, remember that center stage is. I have center stage on the iMac, and I turn it off because it's designed to if you're on a video call like this, and if I were to move around, it would follow me. And it's really disturbing when you're on a video call with someone like that every time they move, the camera follows them.
Yeah.
If someone else comes in, then it zooms out to get more people. It makes sense on a selfie camera where you're holding it in your hand, but on the desktop, it's really annoying. It's available on most new iPad models, maybe not the cheapest one. It's been around for a few years, but I find it really annoying. But this use case is really good. Talking about the photobombing, I don't know if you've seen this commercial. A friend of mine just told me this afternoon. He said it was a Verizon commercial. And it was for a phone. I don't know exactly which one. It was one of these Android phones. And there's these two guys in there camping, and all of a sudden Bigfoot comes, and they take a picture, and they drop the phone and run away. Then Bigfoot picks up the phone and draws a circle around himself and taps it to remove himself from the picture using that new Google AI feature, and then drops the phone and then runs away.
That's amazing.
That's the kind of ad that Apple could never do, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's funny.
But we still have that feature in Apple Photos that can remove people.
Oh, yeah.
It just works a little bit differently from the way it does on Android, and maybe not as efficiently.
Sure.
So if you have those extra people in the thing, what you're talking about is, will the extra people make the camera zoom differently? And yeah, you need a manual override for that.
And then the other thing that I'm very curious about is, so this is an 18 megapixel camera, which is higher than what the selfie camera used to be. But we're basically doing a crop with every shot. So we're either,
right. It's never taking an 18 megapixel shot.
Yeah. So what are we going to end up with? Is everything just going to be upscaled to 12? Or if you have
no, it looks like
3 different people.
If you crop vertical format in a square, it looks like it's going to be about 12, same as if it's horizontal.
Okay.
However, if it has to zoom out, you can see on Apple's animation, it's not filling the entire dimension of the square in landscape or portrait, depending on whether it's zoomed in or zoomed out. So I'm thinking at a minimum, you're going to get 8 or 10 megapixels, which for a selfie isn't that bad.
Yeah, it's not that bad, but it also seems like I don't know. Like, I'm just really curious to see what the quality is, and if you are accepting a trade-off, whether you like it or not, for this cool new feature. And honestly, I'm also kind of curious to see if people will be like, no, I don't want this to recompose automatically. I want to take the shot that I want. And so, can center stage just be turned off? We'll have to find out when that happens. It's interesting.
You can turn it off on a Mac or an iPad for video calls.
Yeah.
But this obviously is a different use of it.
Yeah. One cool thing about this, though, that they showed was, let's say you are filming yourself, right? This gives you like another extra level of image stabilization because it is, cropping live as you're recording or taking a picture, which is also very cool. So it's not like you have to, deal with, the example that they showed was a guy who was running and, he was pretty stable in the frame, which was pretty cool.
It actually didn't look like he was running. It looked like he was just moving on a treadmill or something.
Yeah. Maybe he was.
Okay, so what about the rest of the camera stuff? Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, not really caring that much. Okay, there's a bit more zoom on the Pro, and there's another 48 megapixel camera for the normal camera or the wide camera or whatever on the Pro?
Yeah, so now on the Pro, all 3 back cameras are the 48 megapixel higher resolution, which is, I think, very cool. So one of the 2 things. One, they listed that you could get 48 megapixel macro photos, and I'm really curious because you can do that now with the iPhone 16 Pro because the wide is now the higher resolution camera, but you have to basically override the macro feature because if it kicks into the macro feature, then it's going to downsample to 12 megapixels. So I'm really curious to see if they've broken through that. So you'll actually get a high res macro photo. That'll be cool. But the other big thing is that the telephoto camera, and the telephotos have typically been the lower resolution one because you're giving up resolution in order to get more reach. And Apple says that they've redesigned the tetraprism zoom architecture that gives you reach. And so now you have optical zoom up to 4x instead of 5x zoom. So now it's 4x, but then you can also, which also I should mention, 4x they equate to like 100 millimeters. Apple's the only company now who's actually making those kind of equivalents, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Or you could do an 8x zoom, and that is still they're still calling it optical, but it's a further crop into that big sensor. And so
so it's not 48 megapixels.
It's not 48 megapixels.
But they're calling it like a 200 millimeter zoom.
Exactly, yeah. So I think you end up with a 12 megapixel 8x zoom. So it's like having the zoom before. You're not going to get a lot of the resolution, but hopefully the image quality should be better because it's reading from a higher resolution sensor. Oh, and also they mentioned that the sensor itself is like 56% larger, which is
56%. Precisely.
Exactly. Which is great because that just means you're getting more light to the sensor. So again, like a lot of things that we want to test out and see, I'm really looking forward to the telephoto there.
But you know what they didn't say anything about? Night mode photos, low light photos, whereas the larger sensor and the higher resolution should make them much better.
It should,
They didn't talk about them at all. In fact, the whole presentation was a bit weird. We didn't have the people in front of the green screen with that sort of wall behind them showing everything. They were all out in front of Apple stores or different places like that. And it started out in the morning, and then all of a sudden it got dark, and everything was at night. And it was so weird. It was like, were they in Australia or I don't know, some other country or something? It was very strange. It was very low light. Looking on my iMac, which should have HDR, some of the faces were quite dark, particularly toward the end, and I don't know why. It could have been a half hour shorter, as all of these things that they go on, and like, we don't care. And they had a female voice come in and talk about aluminium, because no longer is the iPhone Pro that old banal titanium, which we've had for the past 2 years. That was the best thing ever. Now it's aluminium.
You have to have somebody saying aluminium. I think that's just Apple
aluminium.
Now. Aluminium?
Aluminium.
Oh.
Aluminium.
No,
yes,
aluminium. Don't you get on me. Exactly. Aluminium.
One thing I found interesting, just to switch register, is that they talk about the new Apple Watch Ultra case being 3D printed.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And, well, 3D printing is a really bad term. There's another term for it, like accretive printing or something. So basically the printer head lays down layers of something, and they're doing that with titanium, which maybe the titanium's melted and they squirt it on top, like when you squirt chocolate syrup on a hot fudge sundae, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then it gets cold.
Yes, something like that. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's neat. Well, I know a lot of people would get really angry at suggesting you put ketchup on a hot dog, but it's fine.
Seriously?
Oh yeah,
is this like a East Coast West Coast thing?
I think it is. I think for some people, the idea of putting ketchup on a hot dog is morally wrong, which can't be.
Oh well, that's so typically. It's so common in New York.
Right.
Long ago,
totally.
One summer, I worked on a hot dog cart, and I had the ketchup, and I had the mustard, and I had the onions. And some people would want one with everything, so you do the ketchup, the mustard, and then the onion. And some would want mustard, and some would want ketchup. It's some want vanilla ice cream and some want chocolate.
Yeah. So I don't know how I love that we went to hot dogs and ice cream like as fast as we possibly could. Now you know our priorities. But I think the technology to make that does seem really cool. I don't know what advantage that it has over, carving it out of a block of titanium, but actually, I think I do.
Probably less waste.
Less waste, and now they're saying that I think it's 50% recycled titanium in it. So basically, they're using old titanium, mixing it in, and building it
from the iPhone 15 and 16,
probably
for the Apple Watch. And in a couple of years, when they change back from aluminium to titanium, they'll use the recycled aluminium for something else.
Yeah.
And
It's
but
cool.
at least they're, keeping that efficient.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you didn't have an iPhone 16 Pro, what would you buy?
I would definitely go for one of the Pro for the 17 Pro because given our interests and our audience definitely wanting to take advantage of better camera technology, I think that's going to be good. Especially, like having more zoom, having higher quality zoom, I think like even normies would appreciate that. They might not appreciate having to pay more for it. And they're still getting the 2x zoom on the Air, which is optical because it's a crop in. And I can't remember offhand the regular iPhone 17. I think it also has just a 2x zoom.
I think it's a 1.24. No, it goes up to 2x. So 0.5x, 1x, and 2x. Whereas the iPhone Air is only 1x and 2x, so you don't get the ultra wide on the iPhone Air.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's the thing you sacrifice with by not having that second lens. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So me, I don't think I'm going to buy a Pro iPhone again for the cost. I'm really, in spite of the color, I mean, if I really had an old phone, I might want to get the Air, but that's just for the cool factor, and I'd be bored, in 6 months. So I'd probably just buy the plain iPhone 17. It's kind of surprising that there's no more iPhone 17 large.
Right. The Plus.
There's only one size.
Yeah, because the Air.
Well, the Air is only a little bit larger than the 17. You would think that you would have the 17 normal and then the 17 Max. So $799, $899 for the Max, $999 for the Air, $1099 for the Pro, etc. You would think that they would want to fill that. But they're not doing that. And I find that a little bit surprising.
Well, I think that might be a way to encourage people to adopt the Air because if you want a larger screen,
of a difference.
I think it is. I think it's
the Air is 6.5 inches. The 17 is 6.3, compared to 6.9 for the Pro Max or whatever.
Yeah.
So it could just be that they're not selling the larger base iPhones as much, and so why bother to manufacture it?
It could be. There's no Plus, so it's just the iPhone, the Air, and then the Max and the Pro Max. One last thing about those two. So following the typical pattern that Apple has had, this year I actually expected that the Pro and the Pro Max would have different camera features because like kind of almost consistently every other year, the Pro Max would have something different. Like with the 15, it had the 5x zoom. Because it couldn't fit it into the 15 Pro. But now if you get the Pro or the Pro Max, you're getting the same exact camera systems throughout. So like that's good.
That could be because of the amount of room in the plateau that sticks up so much, and then the lenses stick up on top of that. So they have more room to put the camera stuff in. And it's probably more cost effective to have the same camera setup in both phones, and not have two different versions.
Totally.
Just in terms of, building the parts.
Yeah. So I mean, what's nice about that is in the past, photographers would be like, all right, I don't really want the large size, but I want this specific exclusive camera feature. But now it's really just, do you want the big size that has the bigger battery and the bigger screen, or do you want to just go regular? So.
And do you want orange or some boring color?
I'm sorry, that wasn't a question. The answer is you want orange. I mean, come on.
All right, we've gone long. If anyone has any questions, drop us a line or visit our Facebook page, or you know where to find us.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about these cameras, I'm sure you're going to have a loaner for review at some point, so you'll be able to do a hands-on.
Hopefully.
He's crossing his fingers. You'll be able to do a hands-on for the next episode.
Yeah. And honestly, I think I am going to buy the orange because I've been I know. Kirk's face just froze like an anime character.
My awe has dropped.
But a large part of that is because I have my iPhone photography take control book that I'll need to update, so I can justify that.
True.
But also, I'm still on the Apple upgrade program, and so that allows me to trade in my current one for the new one, and I have to put out some sort of initial outlay to cover taxes and things. Right. And I haven't calced this out yet, but basically I end up kind of paying the same amount every month, and I get the new model. So
right.
And I totally understand that I'm the outlier there, but I hope to have one when it ships on the 19th. Yeah.
Yep.
So for
the next episode.
So possibly for the next episode. So and we should also point out, people may already know this, but pre-orders start hopefully when this episode goes live on the 12th, and then deliveries start, and it shows up in stores on the 19th of September.
Okay, that's enough for this week. Until next time.
Until next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Photoactive. You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. We couldn't afford the M. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/photoactivecast. That's photoactivecast in one word. You can subscribe to Photoactive in your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts. See the links on our website. And think about leaving us a rating or review in iTunes or in your podcast.